Killers of London. The Thames Torso Murders, 1887-1889. London in the late 19th century was a city drowning in itself. Gas lamps burned through thick fog. Alleyways swallowed sound, and the River Thames carried away what the city no longer wished to see. Bodies were pulled from the water with unsettling regularity. Most were written off as accidents or suicides. Few names were recorded. Fewer questions were asked. Then the bodies stopped being whole. In June 1887, near the Thames mudflats at Rainham in East London, workers discovered a parcel partially buried by the tide. Inside was the torso of a woman. Her head, arms, and legs had been removed. Medical examination revealed the cuts were clean, deliberate, and made with knowledge of human anatomy. There was no evidence of panic or struggle. Death had occurred weeks earlier. No missing person matched the remains. No clothing or jewelry was found. The woman had no recorded identity. Police initially suspected grave robbers or medical students, a fear common in Victorian Britain. Hospitals and anatomy schools were questioned. None could account for the remains. With no leads and no name, the case quietly faded. Over the following months, more discoveries followed. A leg recovered from the Thames, an arm wrapped in cloth, another torso abandoned away from the river. Each victim was female. Heads were never recovered. Limbs were always removed with the same careful precision. There was no variation, no escalation, no apparent emotion. Doctors agreed on a chilling conclusion. Whoever was responsible worked calmly, privately, and with confidence. This was not frenzied violence. It was controlled dismemberment. In September 1888, the case took a disturbing turn. Construction workers excavating a vault beneath Whitehall uncovered another female torso buried beneath brickwork. The location was impossible to ignore. The body had been placed beneath the site of the new headquarters of Scotland Yard while construction was actively underway. Someone had entered a guarded government site unseen and buried a mutilated body directly beneath the future heart of British policing. The victim had been dead for weeks. As before, there was no head, no limbs, and no identifying feature. The placement appeared deliberate. Many investigators believed the killer wanted the body found, not immediately, but inevitably. At the same time, London was gripped by terror over the murders attributed to Jack the Ripper. Newspapers drew instant connections, but police noted critical differences. The Ripper killed in public streets and left bodies where they fell. His violence was immediate and chaotic. The Thames Torso killer worked elsewhere, dismembered victims in private, and disposed of remains days or weeks later. Most modern historians agree the two were not the same person. One killer sought attention, the other erased it. The victims of the Thames Torso murders were almost certainly poor, transient, or marginalized women. In Victorian London, such women often lived without fixed addresses, formal employment, or family oversight. If they vanished, no report was filed. If no one looked, no one noticed. There were no photographs, no confirmed names, no funerals. The investigation suffered from the severe limits of 19th century policing. There was no DNA, no fingerprinting, and no central register of missing persons. Evidence decayed. Witnesses disappeared. Files were shelved. The killer was never identified. No arrest was made. No trial was held. The murders simply stopped. Whether the killer died, moved away, or chose another method is unknown. The case dissolved into silence, leaving behind only fragments, both physical and historical. Today, the Thames flows calmly through London. Boats pass over the same waters where body parts once surfaced. Office buildings stand where torsos were buried. The city rarely remembers, but the Thames Torso murders remain one of Britain's most unsettling unsolved crimes, not because of what is known, but because of how completely the killer vanished. No confession, no name, no justice, only a river that carried the truth away. Killers of London. Jack the Ripper, 1888. London in 1888 was a city split in two. In the West End, wealth and empire flourished. In the East End, particularly Whitechapel, poverty pressed in on every street. Overcrowded lodging houses spilled people into alleys thick with fog. Gaslight and desperation. Many women survived through casual labor and prostitution, sleeping where they could, invisible to those with power. It was here that a killer emerged. Not with spectacle at first, but with a pattern that would soon grip the world. The first widely accepted victim was Mary Ann Nichols, known as Polly. In the early hours of 31st August 1888, her body was found in Buckland's Yard. Her throat had been cut deeply, almost to the spine. Her abdomen was mutilated. There was no sign of a prolonged struggle. Death had come quickly. Police initially treated the murder as another grim byproduct of Whitechapel life. That changed within days. On 8 September 1888, Annie Chapman was found in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street. Her throat had been cut in the same manner. This time the mutilation was more extreme. Parts of her abdomen were removed and her uterus was missing. Medical examiners noted that the removal suggested some anatomical knowledge, or at least growing confidence. The fear began to spread. The killer struck again on 30 September 1888, a night that would become known as the double event. Elizabeth Stride was found in Dutfield's yard, her throat cut but her body otherwise untouched. Many investigators believed the killer was interrupted. Less than an hour later, Catherine Eddowes was murdered in Mitre Square. Her injuries were catastrophic. Her face was mutilated beyond recognition. Internal organs were removed, including part of a kidney. A piece of her apron was later found in Goulston Street, near a chalked message referencing Jews. A detail police erased quickly to prevent unrest. The killer was no longer just murdering. He was escalating. The final canonical victim was Mary Jane Kelly, killed on 9 November 1888 inside her room at 13 Miller's Court. This time, the killer worked indoors uninterrupted. What remained was described by seasoned officers as the most horrific crime scene they had ever witnessed. Her body was extensively mutilated. Almost every organ had been removed or destroyed. The violence suggested total control and complete privacy. After Mary Jane Kelly, the murder stopped. The investigation was chaotic and overwhelmed. Whitechapel was dense, dark, and hostile to authority. Witness statements conflicted. False confessions flooded in. Thousands of men were questioned. None were charged. The name Jack the Ripper came from letters sent to the press and police. Many likely hoaxes. Whether the killer ever wrote a single word is unknown. What is known is that the murders ceased as suddenly as they began. Theories flourished. A local man, a butcher, a doctor, a sailor, a member of the establishment. No theory has ever been proven. Modern analysis suggests the killer knew the streets intimately, struck quickly and vanished into crowds that never truly saw him. His victims, Nichols, Chapman, Stride, Eddowes, and Kelly, were poor women whose lives had already been discounted by society before they were taken. They were not myths. They were people. The killer was never caught. No arrest was made. No trial held. The case dissolved into speculation, legend, and obsession. More than a century later, Jack the Ripper endures not because he was unique, but because he was never stopped. He exposed the limits of policing, the cruelty of class, and how easily a predator can disappear when victims are unseen. London moved on. Whitechapel changed. The questions remained. The greatest horror of the Ripper case is not who he was, but that he was allowed to vanish completely. The Chocolate Cream Killer. Christiana Edmonds, 1871-1872. In the early 1870s, Brighton was a place of refinement and leisure. The sea air promised health. The promenade promised respectability. Behind lace curtains and polite conversation, lives were expected to remain orderly and discreet. Christiana Edmonds did not fit easily into that order. She was intelligent, articulate, and deeply unstable, though Victorian society lacked the language to describe what that meant. Edmonds became obsessively infatuated with Dr. Charles Beard, a married physician. When he rejected her, the fixation curdled into resentment, and then into something far more dangerous. Edmonds did not turn her anger on the man she loved. She turned it outward. In 1871, unexplained poisonings began to occur in Brighton. Children fell violently ill after eating chocolate. Families reported sudden sickness, stomach pain, and vomiting. At first, the cases appeared unconnected. Unfortunate accidents, spoiled sweets, coincidence. They were not. Arsenic had been added to chocolate creams. At the time, arsenic was readily available, commonly used in rat poison and household products. Edmonds obtained it without difficulty. She purchased chocolates from local confectioners, carefully injected or laced them with poison, then returned them to shops or distributed them anonymously. Her method was insidious. She targeted no single person. Instead, she poisoned at random, allowing chance to decide who would suffer. Children were among the victims. Several survived. One did not. In June 1871, a 4-year-old boy named Sidney Barker died after eating poisoned chocolate. His death transformed suspicion into horror. This was no longer illness. It was murder. The investigation widened. Patterns emerged. The same type of chocolates. The same shops. Witnesses recalled a well-dressed woman returning boxes of sweets, complaining politely, blending perfectly into respectable society. Eventually, suspicion settled on Christiana Edmonds. When questioned, she appeared calm, intelligent, and cooperative, but the evidence mounted. Chemists' records showed arsenic purchases. Witnesses identified her in shops. Letters revealed her obsession with Dr. Beard and her desire to ruin him by implicating him in scandal. Her motive was not profit. It was control. At her trial at the Old Bailey in 1872, Edmonds admitted to poisoning chocolate, but denied intending to kill. She claimed she only wanted to cause illness and draw attention to herself and her suffering. The court was unconvinced. The random nature of her crimes, the death of a child, and the calculated method left no doubt. She was found guilty of murder. But instead of execution, the court reached a conclusion rare for its time. Christiana Edmonds was criminally insane. She was sentenced to life imprisonment in Broadmoor Criminal Lunatic Asylum, where she would remain for the rest of her life. There was no gallows, no public execution, no final spectacle, just a locked door. Edmonds died in 1907, after more than 3 decades in confinement. Her name faded. Her victims did not receive the same mercy of forgetting. The chocolate cream poisoner terrified Victorian Britain not because of brutality, but because of proximity. She did not lurk in alleys. She walked into shops. She spoke politely. She looked like everyone else. Her crimes proved something deeply unsettling. Murder did not always wear the face of violence. Sometimes it arrived wrapped in paper and ribbon. Sometimes it tasted sweet.